One thing I've been doing for a while in my climbing is implementing certain constraints and rules on what I can and can't do on the wall. And the reason for this is it's useful to intentionally restrict some movement patterns and promote others with the purpose of improving a specific skill. A caveat to that is you shouldn't implement constraints on yourself when you're just trying to send a boulder, and you should keep these constraints only on your allotted training time when you're trying to improve at climbing rather than perform. It's also very important to train the performance side of climbing and get better at just sending at your highest level. But I think one thing a lot of climbers miss is they only ever try to send. Sometimes climbers who only ever try to just send by any means necessary can limit their long-term growth by not exploring alternate movement patterns and kind of trying to target their weaknesses by restricting what they can and can't do. The first rule I have, which is a pretty common one, which you might have heard before, is only matching when it feels really hard to do the climb without, or it's very, very clearly intended by the route setter. And the reason for that is indoors, all the holds are massive, right? All the holds are a lot bigger, whereas if you go outdoors, the holds get a lot smaller, a lot more nasty. You can't match on a lot of them. Matching especially is bad if you want to gain power and kind of get better at moving dynamically, because it's kind of making every move static. And if you see here on this campus example, it takes more power to go straight to the next hold rather than match in and then go for the next hold. Another argument against matching is you're just moving a lot slower, like you're doing an extra move every move, basically. And if you want to get better at moving efficiently and like not pumping out on lines, then yeah, it's good. Rule number 2, cutting feet is not allowed. If you cut feet on a climb where you're specifically trying to train tension, especially if you climb a lot on a spray wall, on a moon board, anything like that kind of steep style, treat cutting feet as a failed attempt. Even on easy climbs, if you cut feet, if you accidentally cut, repeat the climb until you can do it without cutting feet. Just kind of, I think getting the volume up of repeatedly trying to hold tension on moves where it's hard not to cut on is the number one way you get better at holding tension. Again, indoors, all the footholds are flipping massive. So if you try and transition to outdoors after that, and you've been cutting feet indoors, I mean, you're just gonna have a bad time outdoors. So rule number 3 is about styles of climbing and repeating climbs with multiple betas. So if you're doing a climb and you do it in a style you're good at, and there's potential for an alternate beta with a different style that you can also do that beta. You should repeat climbs with multiple betas, especially the style you're worst at or a style you want to get better at. The fourth and final rule for today is about repeating climbs. So if you do an easy climb, but you didn't do it, you felt like you didn't do it very efficiently, or you felt like it could be cleaner, you should do it again. Try and make the movement as clean as possible. And don't always be satisfied with a send. You shouldn't tick off a climb and go, oh yeah, that's it. Don't have to revisit that ever again. You shouldn't always be satisfied with just the send. You should, especially, I mean, obviously for training purposes, you should just try to make your technique as clean as possible and like really prioritize mastery of the technique over success. You shouldn't see the send of the climb necessarily as a success, because the purpose of training isn't to send, it's to get better. So then when you try to send, you can send harder things. Yeah, if you do an easy climb, but you felt you could have done it better, try and do it again, try and understand the movement, try and make it as efficient as possible. and that will improve your ability to climb with the highest efficiency when you're trying to send. A kind of extension of this is if you do a hard move but you don't really fully understand it, or you do a really hard climb by just brute forcing it, but you don't really understand the movement behind it, you should keep trying it until you can make it consistent and fully understand the movement. So, for example, on a recent hard outdoor climb I did called Electrical Storm, I had done the crux move of the climb and I could get it semi-consistently, like maybe once every 3 tries. But I wasn't very satisfied with that because it still felt really inconsistent and it felt like I hadn't learned the move properly. And so I went back and tried to really refine my beta. I figured out a last little piece of the beta, which made the crux move feel so much more consistent after that, and then I sent it next go, basically. So those are the 4 rules I use in my training. I don't do it 100% of the time, but yeah, I'd say a good deal of the time I try to stick to these rules. And I don't, as I said, do these rules when I'm explicitly just trying to send a boulder. There's a time and a place for training and sending. So you need to make the distinction between the two.